Willie. Now, here's the man who's been recognized as radio's best, the recipient of not one but 2 prestigious Marconi Awards for his broadcast excellence, the one and only Bill Cunningham.
My next guest has written extensively on Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, including Portrait of an American Marriage. The most recent book is Deconstructing Obama, the Life, Loves, and Letters of America's First Postmodern President. Joining me now is Jack Cashill. And Jack, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me on. Always an honor, and deeply appreciate your inviting me in.
Well, we've done this a few times. I had you on about 2 or 3 years ago into the run-up to the 2008 election. You had done computer forensic work that deconstructs phrases, idioms, adjectives, the placement of pronouns, dangling participles, and all the rest. And you quickly discovered that Obama did not write Dreams. In fact, it was written by Bill Ayers. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that was later confirmed by Christopher Anderson in his book, Barack and Michelle, The Portrait of an American Marriage. And yet, the real problem, the issue was in 2008 is getting someone to pay attention to this, Bill.
Well, why didn't they?
It's because the major media simply did not want to know anything about their man that would have blocked his path to the White House. And why it was particularly important is, he's always had this affinity for teachers. And in 2008, that same summer, and we can talk about this later with Wisconsin, but in 2008, he speaks to a convention of teachers in Virginia, and he tells them, I wrote 2 books, and they applaud. And then he goes, actually, I wrote them myself. Now they not only applaud, but they laugh, you see, because Republicans aren't capable of writing their own books. And so Obama's genius myth, regardless of who wrote the book, was tied into his being what Jonathan Raven, the British literary heavyweight, calls the best writer to occupy the White House since Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Dreams was called by Time magazine the best written memoir by a political figure ever. He was a genius, and it hinged on his book.
Well, in 2004, when Bush was running for the presidency again, Kerry made a big issue of his service in the Alabama National Guard.
Right.
Teams of reporters flew into Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. They went all over the state. They spoke to some of the guys he flew with. How long was he there? Did 41 pull any strings to get him into that unit? It was well documented. At the end of the day, there was no there, but the media dragged him through the mud for weeks just to throw some mud on Bush. But on the other hand, when there was documentary computer evidence that Dreams for My Father was not written by Obama, I think Rush Limbaugh mentioned it one time, but it was largely ignored. That's
absolutely right. And now, in book form, in Deconstructing Obama, the evidence is overwhelming when you see it in a long-form format. And I write it like a detective story, and I tell the story of 2008 and what happens when the media do not want to know that you exist. They can shut you out, So,
well, talk about Obama with the SEIU, with teachers' unions. You have a lot of quotes in your book about his support for unions. Deeply embedded in this guy is his support for public employee unions, not just because he gets a lot of money from them, and not just because he's as everyone I imagine is concerned about public education, but because he knows they're at the heart and soul of his reelection effort. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were the teachers union is the NEA is the single greatest supporter of the Democratic Party today. They'll send more delegates to the Democratic National Convention than any other group, and they'll probably provide very nearly as much money. In his first year in office, Bill, the one visitor who came to the White House most often, and this is documented, was Andy Stern, who was the head of the SEIU, the Service, whatever that Employees
International Union, SEIU.
And they are, they are sort of the twin, the front twin, not the evil twin of Acorn. And they go hand in hand. One was spawned out of the side of the other. And Obama's been in bed with these people since he got out of Harvard. As soon as he came back to Chicago, he went to work for Project Vote, which was an Acorn subsidiary. And, he's been boasting for years that he's Acorn's guy, that he's a union's guy. Mm-hmm. And These are his people. I mean, if without the public service unions, there's no more Democratic Party. You know,
well,
that's what it comes down to.
I can recall in the campaign, Obama went to an Acorn convention and said, "You're going to have your best friend ever in the White House. I love Acorn. I've represented Acorn. Acorn will be in the front of my mind every day that I walk in the Oval Office." I mean, he makes no qualms whatsoever about his love for Acorn, the SEIU, the American Federation of Teachers, and these other big-time unions, and that's why he felt compelled to jump in on the side of the unions in Wisconsin.
That's right, and it's not going to work for him. The move so far in Wisconsin is even the major media are beginning to not report it as some sort of victory for the left. I mean, they're having real qualms about what's going on there. He says at one point he said the SEIU's agenda is my agenda. I mean, he said that in a public statement. You know, and he was outspoken about it. And now that they are behaving so badly, and the era of social media too. I mean, I had on Facebook today at least a half a dozen people. Bill, you probably saw them. Sent me videos of these doctors signing false notes for the teachers, and this stuff gets around. They can't control the media the way they did, 8, 10, 12, 16 years ago, as they did in Clinton's era. When you could shut down the government and then make the people who want to be fiscally prudent the enemies in this battle. It can't happen anymore.
See, that's the great debate, Jack, is that somehow, to repeat what happened 17 or 16 years ago, the Republicans are going to be tagged with shutting down the government when it's really Obama. It was really Clinton. But do you think this time, because of the preeminence of Fox, because of talk radio, the blog sites, Drudge Report, Newsmax, WorldNet Daily, it's not going to fly this time?
I think if the Republicans have the resolve this time, they will succeed much better than they did in 1995 or 6. Well, for two reasons. One is that the explosion in social media and the inability of the major media, which have diminished considerably in their influence since then. But the second thing is that everyone understands today that we don't have the money to jack around any longer.
We don't. I mean,
right.
We all know the states. We have governments at every level we cannot afford, whether it's city, county, state, or federal. We have to deconstruct government at every level, and Obama can't be that guy, right?
No, he can't be. And other than the school teachers in Wisconsin, it seems like everyone in America understands that now,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a mentor of Obama's who was Frank Marshall Davis. Give us a short biography of Frank Marshall Davis.
Well, Davis is an interesting character. He was born in 1905 in central Kansas. He's black. He went to Kansas State University, was a poet of promise, actually a very good poet, a very good writer. Went to Chicago, became head of this black, AP, the equivalent of in the 40s. There, though, he drifted from, he was a Republican. Then he became a member of the Communist Party USA. He was also a pornographer. He was also a nude photographer, which shows up later on in his relationship with Obama's mother. Then in 1948, after marrying a white socialite, he gets called to Hawaii to serve as the propagandist in chief for the shutdown of Hawaii by the ILWU, the International Longshoremen's Workers Union, which was a Stalinist front organization. Harry Bridges made no bones about that. And it was in Hawaii that finally he meets up with the young Obama, and he serves as something of a mentor for Obama when he's an adolescent. Now, this guy, remember, is a pornographer. He's bisexual. He's a Communist Party member, and the left, to the degree they recognize Frank Marshall Davis, and he shows up in Dreams from My Father, 10 times under the name Frank. They say, what a good thing that Obama's grandfather introduced young Obamas to this guy. No, it was a terrible thing.
And let's face it, the grandfather and grandmother were Ann Dunham's parents, and they were white as chalk. And so Obama looked toward Frank Marshall Davis as his real father because he was the same color. He was a revolutionary. He was a pornographer. He was a communist, an avowed communist. He took his leadership from Frank Marshall Davis.
Yeah, he did. In fact, as I talk about in the book, there was a poem that Obama submitted to the Occidental College Literary Review when he was 19 called Pop. And I went online to read about it, and all of the major reviewers said, Pop is a loving evocation of Obama's relationship with his grandfather, whom Obama called Gramps. So as I write in the book, I said, okay, if I'm writing a poem about a guy I call Gramps, why am I calling it Pop, right?
Yeah.
There's an implication of paternity there. But moreover, as I got into it, and you read the lines in the poem, is that in the key line of the poem, this guy gets up and stands and reads a poem to Obama he wrote just after his mother died. Well, Stanley Dunham, the grandfather, his mother died when he was 8 years old. She committed suicide. He wasn't a poet. Frank Marshall Davis was a poet. He was already established as a poet of promise when his mother died at 20. The poem Pop is about Frank Marshall Davis. And as I got into it, I began to see that the poem Pop was about Frank Marshall Davis. And in that word, Pop, then you realize that opened the doors on me, Bill. And then I realized that the whole origin story, and I had tried to avoid all this stuff, that they've been telling the world that they rode to the White House on was false, profoundly false in some significant ways. There was no little happy, multicultural, interracial Obama family. It never existed. There's an excellent chance that they never married, his mother and Barack Sr.
There's no marriage certificate. In fact, right after the birth, Ann Dunham took Barack with her to the state of Washington, didn't she?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And this is inarguable. And yet all the Obama biographies to have this happy little family living in Hawaii for the first couple of years. Last year, speaking of school teachers and school children, Obama talked, remember when he talked writ large to America's school children, he says, I know what your struggles you have, because when I was 2, my father left for Harvard. No, your father never saw you. He never lived with you. The whole thing was created as a fiction for Obama to give him identity as a kid. But then, after Dreams was written in 1995, they realized the power of this myth to get Obama elected to higher office. And in 2004 and 2008, and both of his convention speeches, he wasn't 2 sentences into those speeches before he talked about the improbable love, their vision for their young son, blah, 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 blah. And the major media turned their back on this. They don't want to know.
Jack Cashill, if a Republican had these kinds of gaping gaps in their biography, you could drive a Mack truck through it because they would never stop. When Sarah Palin was nominated in Dayton, Ohio to become a VP under McCain, there were planes of reporters heading toward Nome, Wasilla, Alaska, wherever in Alaska they could find anybody to talk, to make sure the biography was correct, there wasn't any dirt. Why didn't they do the same thing with Obama?
Well, just in fact, to reiterate your point, when Going Rogue came out, and this was a year after the vice presidential run, the Associated Press alone sent 11 fact checkers in to just review that one book. Why they didn't do it with Dreams from My Father is because they were afraid what they would find. And that is the reason they're so squirrely with the birth certificate. I mean, we've been, in a sense, there's a misleading to people to think that all birthers believe that Obama was born in Kenya or something. No. Birthers just basically asking a question, tell us about the first 2 years of Obama's life. What is wrong with that birth certificate? I don't know what the answer is, but I would bet that it's either the date or the place, or even the father.
Maybe. Something's wrong with it, and now if something is wrong with it, I guarantee you it's been lost and doesn't exist anymore.
No, we'll never see it. And yet in Dreams from My Father, Obama talks about having it in his hands,
Yeah, he does. He looked at it. He had it.
Yeah.
All right, we got to run. Jack, once again, the book is Deconstructing Obama. Is that correct? Where can you get it, if
correct.
Anywhere?
You can get it any place you buy books. It's out. Just came out a couple days ago, and we need a grassroots effort to push this up because the major media don't want to know about it. You're not going to see me on the Today Show in the near future.
Has anyone got a hold of you like the Today Show, CBS Sunday Morning, 60 Minutes, anything like that?
No, are you kidding? In fact, my publisher is Simon & Schuster, and they're trying,
Well, if something bad's written about Bush, Cheney, or Rumsfeld, I guarantee you're on all the media outlets immediately.
You're absolutely right, and maybe I should just name it Deconstructing Bush and then trick them.
You'd be booked everywhere.
Absolutely.
All right, Jack Cashill, thank you.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me on. Take care.
We'll do it again. The truth will set us all free. Let's continue with more. When Obama shut down drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico, eliminating 10 to 15,000 good-paying jobs, it demonstrated to me he was pursuing utopian social policy at the expense of the middle class, and that was disgusting. J.D. in Tennessee. J.D., welcome to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Well, thank you, sir, for taking my call. I appreciate it. I have to apologize in advance because I'm disheartened and disgusted about the turn of events that have been taking place recently. By the way, I want to thank you for the gentleman you had at the top of this last hour, Jack.
Cashill.
Yes, sir. I'm going to buy his book tomorrow.
It's wonderful.
If I can find it.
If you can find the book, I'm reading it. Deconstructing Obama is the name of the book, and I read the book, and I'm thinking, if half of this is true, we have a fraud in the White House. If it's all true, I'm shocked and amazed the media let us down this much.
Well, it's just like I said, it's disgusting and it's disheartening, and I apologize for being so negative. I'd like to be a positive American. I'm an honorably discharged veteran. I carried a rifle for this country. You don't have to thank me for my service. I volunteered. I knew what I was getting into. Right now, I feel like a fool. When I look at what's going on in Wisconsin with these union people and the teachers union and all of that, saying that we're here for the children, that is just an abject, bald-faced lie. It is a lie. They are there for their own interest, lining their own pockets.
$100,000 per teacher per year is what it costs the state of Wisconsin. And they're asked to donate 0.2% for their pension that pays them $60,000 a year for the rest of their life. And
they won't even sacrifice that to save their own state from going into bankruptcy. I mean, again, Mr. Cunningham, I am disgusted. I am not by nature a pessimist or an optimist. I am a realist. I don't like being negative, but I tell you right now, my hand to God, I believe that if something doesn't turn around in this country, and I mean very quickly, we are done. We are done as a country. I am not proud to call myself an American. When I look at moochers, slackers, freeloaders, and parasites like I see in Madison, Wisconsin, I am ashamed to be an American. And I carried a rifle for this country.
Well, J.D., I'll say this.
I'm an honorably discharged
J.D., you just put the cheese on the cracker right there.
I am just so disgusted with look, at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the people in this country right now fall into the categories that I just mentioned. They're slackers, they're freeloaders, they're moochers, or they're parasites. And I'm sick of it. And if we don't turn this country around and people don't start relying on themselves, their friends, their families, their neighbors, and picking themselves up off their asses and get on their boots, pick themselves up by their bootstraps and get to work, we are done. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be so negative, but I am just so disgusted, Mr. Cunningham. And you saved me a lot of money in therapy tonight because you just allowed me to unload. I appreciate it very much, and God bless you, sir.
And God bless America. J.D., that was pretty good. I'm an optimist and a realist. I think America's brighter days lie ahead. But if Obama has his way for 6 more years, we are done.